Last time we finished until the paragraph beginning with Zeu Loshon Atzilus on page Omid Beis. And we just finished the long hagaha Tes, and then the two short hagahs of Yud and Yud Aleph, which finished off the previous paragraph. And the Nukuda of the previous of the hagaha Tes was that the Kelim of Atzilus are in an Eifen of Briyesh Ma'ayin. That was the Nukuda. And from that, he concludes the point, which is in the mind of the Irratera itself, and also expressed in Hagah's Yud and Yud Aleph, that therefore for the Eibush to be mislabish, for the Kus, for the Eiris to be mislabish in Atzilus, is a Yerida Gedoyla, is a Yerida Bashpala. It's Be'in Aroich. The Inyan of Briyesh Ma'ayin, as we explain, Hagaha Tes is the Inyan of Be'in Aroich. It's not Ila Ba'alul, which is the Eifen of Kiruv, and the Eifen of Erech, but the Eifen of Be'in Aroich. Shalachain, for there to be the Gil, first of all, the very creation of the Kelim of Atzilus, and weiter the slabshus of the Eiris in the Kelim, the Eiris Pshutim, because we're talking about Dasam Areches, yeah? Those Eiris Pshutim, the Mislabish, is a inyan of Yerida Vashpal. Okay. And now we're going to go weiter. We're going to bring a sort of a small shtickle from the Irratera, and then we're going to go into Hagaha Yud Beis, which is a Tifa Hagaha. And it needs a lot of attention and focus to really figure out what it's trying to say. And to the point where you have to be possibly medayik in the lotion a lot more, just to appreciate what it's saying. Because enter into the important sugya. The important sugya we're going to enter into is the sugya of Gimel Madregas in the Eir. The Etzema Eir and the two Madregas in the Spashtas Eir. The Gilu Eir La'atzmi and the Gilu Eir Hashayich Alazulas. And that's going to be the sugya that's going to emphasize in the next Hagaha. And we're going to need a little bit of Simas Lev to really figure out what it's trying to say. Let's do first the Loshon of the Irratera from the Maimon Pasach Liyol, which starts in the paragraph V'zeu Loshon Atzilus. Yeah. V'zeu Loshon Atzilus, B'Loshon HaKedesh. So this is what it means when we say the word Atzilus, and we use it in the Eisis HaKabbalah of Atzilus. And what are we trying to imply by using the word Atzilus? It means in Hebrew, Loshon Yerida V'Ashpolim Madrigose Elyon. It means a Yerida from the previous Madrig. Atzilus. If something is Ne'etzal, it means you take one Madriga and then it's transformed in some form or other from the Matzil to the Ne'etzal, and that is in a manner of Yerida. Now this is interesting because in the Pasuk, when we have Loshon Atzilus, we have a few interpretations. You have Atzilei B'nei Adam, I think it's Loshon B'nei Adam. Atzilei B'nei Adam, which just means, which you have in Bereshis somewhere, in the early Bereshis, it means noble people, right? The nobility. Someone who's Atzil is noble, elite. So it's one pshat. When you have in the pasuk that we're going to be talking about now, V'atzalti min haruach, the Pirush HaTargum, which is also the Pirush Rashi, is that it means to increase, which is in the Lechera, the complete opposite of what we're saying here. It's the Inyan of Yerida Vashpol is you would think is a decreasing. But Atzilus, he describes here as being, and it's more from the Pshat Atzilus to be an Inyan of Yerida Mimadrigase El Yoina, seems to be from the context of the story of Moshe and how he was able to appoint the Shivim Zkenim to share with him the responsibilities of managing the people. So it doesn't seem to be Miloshin. I'm not sure. It says Beloshin HaKodesh, as if Keilu, this is the pshat in the word. Doesn't seem to be the pshat in the word in the places where it's used in the Chumash. So let's see how he explains it. Lahashpil es atzmei ki ilu hu b'madrega b'chusa. To denigrate, degrade oneself as if you're on a lower level. As in the way it's used in the pasuk regarding Moshe. Now, what is the context there? Moshe says, Moshe said, how am I supposed to give these people meat? From where am I going to get meat from? Which is the pshat. He was on such a madrig al yena, he wasn't able to engage with the role of providing fleishiks. So what does Hashem say to him? Es v'li shivim ish. Gather together for me 70 people. Shem b'madrega ha'pechusa, who they are on a lower level than you. Haim shaloyu miskashmi mamish. And it's not the pshat that it's been. I think that the pshat is haim shaloyu. Not that they should be entirely megushin, but rather they should be like a mamutza between you and the role of providing this service. So what does it say? Because I am going to miloshen atzilus min haruach. So the Pirush HaPashut is, I'm going to increase upon you a spirit, asher alecha, v'samti alehem, and I'm going to place it on them. So that he says, no, Pirush is not the atzalti v'israbi, like it says in the Targum. Ela Pirusha oirid va'amshich b'china shelcha sheyiyeh lamate min madregoscha. First of all, I'm going to take your madrega va'atzalti min haruach. I'm going to, in a sense, degrade your spirit. I'm going to take your madrega, your ruach, and I'm going to be va'atzalti. I'm going to degrade it. I'm going to put it on a lower madrega. And then v'samti alehem. And then that madrega I'm going to place on them. Sheyiyeh yenika gam lohem min madrega zu. So they will also be able to benefit, derive sustenance from this madrega. Okay? I think, I don't know. I haven't looked up all the Mafushin, but I think the pshat here in Atzilus as being Miloshin Yerida in Madrigos El Yena is from the context of this story. Otherwise, what's the pshat? You can't do it, so I'm going to make you even more Moshe, this Rabbi. I'm going to make you more of a Moshe. And then I'm going to place it on them. The problem at the moment is Moshe is not shaykh to it. So if you're going to make more Moshe, it's going to be even less shaykh. So maybe there are other Mafushin that say this pshat. I don't know. But that's what I've got for you at the moment. Okay, so now we're going to go into hagaha Yud Beis, which goes on for quite a while, another good few pages. Venira. So what does it appear that's going on over here? Shemavaya kan Beis Inyanim, and it's important that already at the beginning of the year in Nunchas, if you look in the footnote 422, you have the Tzion to Tafish Nunchas. A lot of this pirush that he's going to say now, he'd already said in the Maimah from Lech Lecha at the beginning of the year of Tafish Nunchas. Venira Shemavaya kan Beis Inyanim. What it's explaining over here in the Maimah of the Irratera is two inyanim. Aleph, Masha Oirid va'amshich b'china shelcha lamatim madrigoscha. First of all, there is the Yerida v'hamshachas Moshe, that it should be lamata, it should be degraded, it should be decreased. V'habeis v'samti aleim sheyenik gam lehem madrigazu, and the placing on them that they should be able to have yenika. It's a two-stage thing. It's not one thing. One whole thing, it's two separate things. And it's now going to give three pirushim on that. So you see this v'yesh leima, there's going to be a v'yesh leima, there's going to be an oyesh leima, and there's going to be another oyesh leima. So we're going to have three pirushim about what it means for there to be atzilus, miloshin, yerida v'amshacha, and then v'samti aleim is the second pshat. the second inyan. V'yesh lema. The mashas kenim yilem yenikim yimadreges Moshe. This that there's a kenim should be able to draw sustenance, to be able to get a chayas, to be able to have a shaychus to the madrega of Moshe. So rak ha'or levad miruchas Moshe. We're for sure talking purely about a ha'or levad. They're not getting the substance of Moshe's ruach. If they're going to get a unika from it, then unika is doch the pshat, that they don't have the thing itself, right? If it's a unika is the pshat, it's dealing with the chitzonish of it, only a ha'ara of it. The chol unika bechinas ha'ara levad. Okay. K'mishkos mokem achab der ramascha v'avim zokin ha'hefresh bein ma sha'avo malbishim bezrois ta'arech ampin ubein ma sha'abo yenek v'mazala. V'mazala is ta'arech ampin sh'chachim michos mesti ma sh'bechinas pnimis ha'kes techuli ubechinas unika levad. Ainu ha'ara levad. Okay. So in this other maimah, it talks about the difference between the way that Chacham and Bina have a shaykhus to Chacham and Vatzilus, have a shaykhus to Arich Ampin and Atik. And it talks about how Abba, Chachma is Yonik min Mazala. That from the Madrega Pnimis HaKesa, it's only able to be Yonik from it. And it calls it in Loshen Mazala. Mazala in Loshen Noizal, like a dripping. So it's a sort of a ha'ara levad. It's not the thing itself. Right? If you're very interested, you can look up the Irratera in ha'ara 427, when the Maimon comes from. Aval. So the Nukud it wants to say is that if we're using the term Yinika, there's a Yinika of the Shivim Zakanim from Moshe Rabbeinu. It's clear that the Yinika is from the ha'ara and not that there's a direct accordance or comparability between the Madrega of Moshe and the Madrega of this kingdom. Aval Masha Kosova Tzalti min Ruach Asher Alecha Sha'orid va'amshich b'chinas shelcha l'matim madrigoscha yishleimash u'masha nimshach mi'atzmas ruchei shel Moshe v'yerid l'matim madrigosei v'oz v'samti aleihem shenimshach lehem ha'ara mizeh. So stage one is that the madriga of Moshe is mamash nimshach. Not a ha'ara of Moshe is nimshach, but Moshe's madriga is mamash nimshach to a madriga b'chusa. And from that madriga b'chusa, that is where there is a yinika for this kenim, which is from a ha'ara from that. Why no the ha'ara zu shenimshach ala ze kenim lo nimshach b'chinas Moshe atzmei ki im la'acha sha'ir b'chinas shel chol matin madrigoscha v'az nimshach mizeh ha'ara ala ze kenim. So the beer here is you have two very distinct madrigas, two stages, and the stage one is whereby Moshe Rabbeinu's madrega itself is nimshach to a madrega pechusa, and stage two is a ha'ara from that new madrega pechusa is the zakenim are able to be yonik from. Okay, so that is the biur of what it said in the in the Maimon Pasuk Liyah. So okay, what's that got to do with here? I mean, that's a why is this all relevant to us? Because it explains to us the Lashon Atzilus. So we want to understand what Atzilus is. We're not so focused on what the pshat in the story in Baal Yischa is with Moshe and Canaan. So the dogma kazeis la ma'ila bin Atzilus yishleim ma shezeu beis madrega shebekesa. So this can help us understand what is these are two madrigas in Kesa. Because remember, what did we say? We said that the Kalim of Atzilus are Priyesh Ma'ayin. What's the Ayin? What's the Ayin? The Ayin is the Eish L'mayla Me'atzilus. What's the Eish L'mayla Me'atzilus? It's Kesa. In this structure of sort of Ishtalshalus, we're imagining the dargas that are in play. We've got Kalim of Atzilus, we've got Eiris of Atzilus, we've got Kesa of Atzilus, And then we've got Eirin Seish Lifnat, we've got the Tzimtzum. And the Eirin Seish Lifnat Tzimtzum. There's no Ak, there's no Akudim, we're not talking about that at the moment. Okay? They're not Nageh. So what are these two Inyanim of Atzilus? Let's say it's the two Madregas in Kesser. Tamashakos of Atzalti Eirid V'amshich B'chinas Shel Chazeh Ulamayla B'chinas Tachtoina Sheba Ma'atzil. So when it says V'atzalti, what's it a reference to? What is the Madrega which is being Nimshach and being caused to go to a lower Madrega? It's the Madrega which is the Tachtoina Sheba Ma'atzil. By Mashkos Lukadesh Mashunim Ba'abiyah the Shcheyanim Nava Perek Aleph. By Sofis Deva Maskol Avnim Mashkos Beis Chaim Perek Dalet Pirush. So what does it say in the famous Maim Lov in Mashkos Beis Chaim? Very important Maim B'chlal. Pirush Masha Atik Hu Bechinas Tachtoina Sheba Einseif. So Pnimis HaKeser Atik is referred to as Tachtoina Sheba Einseif. Eine Bechinas Ha'ara, the Ha'ara. Eine Shu Bechinas Ha'ara Me'eirin Seif Shefnei HaTzimtzum. V'zeu Bechinas Tachtoina Sheba Ma'atzil Shu Ha'ara Me'eirin Seif HaMa'atzil. To be more precise, Eine Bechinas Malchus the Ein Seif Shenasa Keser V'atik La'atzilus. So what is Atzilus? What is the Atzilus, more not as a noun, but sort of Atzilus as a verb. What is the action of Atzilus? The act of Atzilus is the transition from Malchus to Ein Seif, the Malchus of Eirin Seif Lifnei HaTzimtzum, into Pnimius HaKesser. So there's a Yirida of the Madrega of Malchus to Ein Seif, so it should become Pnimius HaKesser. That's Atzilus. The Malchus Bichlal Bechinas Gilu Ha'ara Levat, V'nikra Shemoy Melech Shemoy Nikra Aleim Chuli. Because Malchus, even the Malchus the Eirin Seif, Malchus the Ein Seif, Malchus of Eirin Seif Shlifnei HaTzimtzum, is itself just a Ha'ara Bilvat. Because what's Malchus? Malchus is referred to as a name. What is a name? A name is not the thing itself. It's a Ha'ara of the thing. Ela Sheba Ha'eri Yesh Leimar Shuhu Bechinas Etzem Ha'er. However, this Eir, one could say, is the dagger of Etzem Ha'er. Maybe a Ha'ara, maybe a Eir, but it's Etzem Ha'er. Ukiyadua. Sheyesh Bechinas Etzem Ha'er V'Ispashtas Eir. Because we know there's a thing called Etzem Ha'er and a thing called Ispashtas Eir. Okay. Where do we know Etzem Ha'er Ispashtas Eir? We know Etzem Ha'er Ispashtas Eir from where? From Basilegani. Right? Oftentimes the person's first encounter with Etzem Ispashtas Eir, the first Eisa Basilegani. What does the Rebbe say? He references the Rebbe Rashab, and he says, the Rebbe Rashab says there's Gimel Madregas in Eir. There's Etzem Eir, there's Ispashtas Eir. In Ispashtas Eir, there's two Madregas. Gilo Eir La'atzmen, Gilo Eir Ashayich Lazulas. Yeah? And in the footnote there, in Basilegani, the Rebbe refers to the Maimah Kodesh Yisrael in Samach Vav. Kodesh Yisrael in Samach Vav. The Rebbe also has another tziyun to a Maimah in Tofesh Sadik Tes, but that is less. That is more important when they get to the union of Shechina, how it connects to Shechina. But the classic text, classic Maimah, where you're going to get a very good Arichas Tikabir on the Gimel Madregas and Eir, is the Maimah Kodesh Yisrael in Samach Vav, which is worth learning. Not so from the beginning, from page Tofish Ayin Gimel in the new one, and Tovkuf Yud, I think it is in the old one. So, also, I mean, there's also a very good shtickle in Sefer Erchim Chel Gimel, in Seif Beis. I can't remember the page number. There you go. That's where you want to look. Yeah, oh yeah. In the footnote here, 433.
All these R's.
Yeah, I mean, you could go through the whole of 433. But obviously, it's a big sugya. Big sugya.
Just like the Rebbe Rashab invented it by the look of the Maim Kimis.
You would think so, but it's actually interesting that to say how much it exists beforehand as a dominant sugya. But I think it's more or less there in the Lavin Mashakos Beishas Chaim is also there. Per Gimel of the Maimel Lavin Mashakos Beishas Chaim, which is the Beishas Chaim. There you'll find it. That's in the Hisofis to Vayikra. And look at the Torah. Dafn and Dalet, I think the Gimel and Dalet. That is the mocker of all of this. But by the Rebbe Rashab is a big sugya. So you have Etzem Eis Pashas and two Madrigas in Eis Pashas. I want to finish this Yesh Lema, and then before we get to the next Yesh Lema, we'll discuss what the Samach Vav says. That's what it has to say here. So what's that? So this is how he explains it here. Just like you find with the name. Yes, Etzem Hashem, V'Ispashtus Hashem. You have the function of a name can be an inyan atzmi and shaykh ala etzem, or it can be shaykh ala zulas. A person has a name even before someone calls their name. So of course, someone calls their name, they respond, can react, but it's not as if the person didn't have the name beforehand. That shame that a person has, that name a person has, is specific to them. The function of the name that somebody else can identify them and can get them to pay attention in a crowd, that's just the Ispashtus Hashem. That's just the function of the shame, the Gabi the Zulas. So we see that a person faints. One of the methods of trying to revive them is you call them by their name, right? Because the name is an inyan atzmi, which is shaykh to the neshama. To revive them, to have the kishur of the neshama with the guf, is al yidei Hashem. A person has an atzmistic kishur between them and their name. So we see when chas v'shalom someone's ill, you say tilim al isis Hashem. Mishnayos, you say Mishnayos, the name of the neshama. The name is shaykh to the person. It's not just shaykh al-azulas, it's shaykh al-atzmi. So you have etzem Hashem, the way it's shaykh to the person, and then you have the Ispashtus Hashem, the way it's shaykh to everyone else. So the same is true when you talk about the Eir L'mayla. Bechinas etzem ha'Eir hu mashal L'mayla adayin bechinas Ispashtus. V'kilu ela eilamais ana etzalim. What is when we say etzem ha'Eir, what do we mean? We mean a type of Eir which is entirely higher and above any gilui to the netzon. Ubechinas Ispashtus ha'Eir, ubechinas ha'gilu ela eilamis. Whereas Ispashtus ha'Eir is where it's begilu ela eilamis. That's how he teaches etzem ha'Eir and Ispashtus ha'Eir. V'zeu bechinas tachtoina shebamatzu. And that is what we mean when we say tachtoina shebamatzu. Why do we need to say the word tachtoina shebamatzu? We said before, what is the inyan of Atzilus? The act of Atzilus is the inyan of the way the Eir becomes the tachtoina shebamatzu. Shu bechinas etzem ha'Eir shelamayla adayin me'yagilu elana etzolim v'nikra atik shenetak v'nivdal adayin. It's very confusing. This first Yishleim I find very confusing. Because are we talking about, well, we're talking about sort of, we seem to be talking about the Eir and Sof Lifnei HaTzimtzum. A dagger called Etzem ha'Eir in the Eir Lifnei HaTzimtzum, and a dagger called Ispashtus ha'Eir. Yeah? inyan of Atzilus is taking that etzem ha'oir and enabling it to become, even from Nispashtus, even from Yerida v'Ashpola, ad shemagia letachtoina shebamatzil, which we call pnimis hakesa kesa v'atzilis. Yeah. So in Malchus of Atzilus, in Malchus the Ein Sof, there are two madrigas. There's Etzem Ha'oir, just like the Etzem Hashem, she's only Shaykh La'atzmei. And then there's this Pashtus which is Shaykh La'azulis. Now, since, as we're going to see, when we talk about, if we're only talking about two madrigas in Oir, we're not talking about here about three madrigas in Oir, two madrigas in Oir. The pirush that he gives for Etzem Ha'oir sounds much more like the Hispashtus Ha'oir, which is a Gilu La'atzmei, than it's actually talking about Etzem Ha'oir. It seems like he's talking about here two madrigas in Hispashtus Ha'oir. Because what's the example he gives? The name that a person has is Begilu La'atzmei. It's not Begilu La'azulas. It's not Shaykh La'azulas. But it's Begilu La'atzmei. So the Chayr is not talking about Etzem Ha'oir, Etzem Mamish. It would seem. But it just seems strange that he would use that term in that way. But Nirali, that's what he's saying. That when we think about, we want to understand what Atzilus is. We would never lose sight of what is our Matorah over here. Matorah is to try and understand what is Atzilus. The Sifrei Kabbalah refer to this Olam as Olam HaAtzilus. By calling it Olam HaAtzilus, it's indicating to us the Oifen his Havusa, how this world came about to be. Atzilus is the pshat, you take a Madrega Elyoina, and you're married the Mamshechet to a Madrega Pechusa. That is the Taich Atzilus. And with thereby calling it Atzilus is explaining that the Eir HaEin Sof, the Malchus, the Ein Sof, is Yerid, the Nimshach, to become Madrigas Pnimis HaKesa, Atik, and that's called Tachtein Shebamatzil. The process of generating the Kesa of Atzilus, Pnimis HaKesa of Atzilus, is a process called Atzilus. Comparable to V'atzalti min HaRuach, when it came to Moshe, that Moshe from his Madrega had to be Yerid to Madrega Puchus. Yeah? Now, let's talk now a little bit about the Madrigas, the Gimel Madrigas now. Before we get on to Etzem Ha'oir, let's talk about Hispashtus Ha'oir. Because when we think about Oir, usually, when we say Oir, what's Geder Ha'oir? Geder Ha'oir is Geder Gilui. Right? So, the idea that there's such a thing called Oir, which is not Hispashtus Ha'oir, it seems a bit strange. If it's an Oir, it's a Hispashtus. Because it's hard, it's a Gilui. By definition, Oir should be Hispashtus. I mean, as we understand Oir, Oir again is, don't forget, Oir is a moshel. What is Oir? Depends. Oir HaNer, Oir HaShemesh, Oir HaNefesh. It's already not, how much of a moshel is that? Keich HaNefesh, Oir HaNefesh. We're trying to use a word to describe something in Elikus. Why are we using the word Oir? We talked in a previous hagaha about the dafka using the word Oir and not using the word Shefa, right? Why are we using Oir? Because Oir has all the qualities we want. Oir is Dovakim Ma'oir, Oir is Me'ena Ma'oir, and everything. But it's only a Ha'ara. It's not the Ma'oir itself. So there's no Shinuyim in the Ma'oir. And our primary mashal for that is the Oir of Ziv HaShemesh. Even though there are problems with the mashal of Oir of Ziv HaShemesh, And that's why we have the mashal of Eir v'keichas hanefesh, because it has to be a gilur tzainis. It's not gilur achreichi. By the Eir of Hashem, it's gilur achreichi. We want it to be a gilur tzaini. But so we borrow from both things that we said in the previous hagaha. But let's stick with the Eir of Hashem, which is the classic mashal. Pashtus, the Eir has to be bispashtus. Otherwise, it's not Eir. When the Eir of Hashemesh is b'teich guf kader Hashemesh, it's not Eila b'shem Eir klal. It says in Tanya, right? Some places it says Ein Eila b'shem Eir klal, and not near the Eir klal. And it's biskalas b'mekeirani. Then it's not Eir. It's just Moed. The Chayr. So let's just talk first about Ispashtus. What is the difference between these two stages in Ispashtus? There's the Gilu La'atzmei we described, and there's Gilu Zulasi. So the mashal for this, the standard mashal for this, is Machshava and Dibur La'atzmei. Because remember, it's all Lifnei Atzimtzum. It's all the Atzmei. Even the Eir HaShayach, even the Ispashtus Eir HaShayach La'ilamis, is still the Atzmei. Within himself, within Eir and Seish and Atzimtzum, there's a hash'ara of how the Eir is going to be La'achar Atzimtzum. But it's not mamash Shayach yet. It's not Shayach to it. So L'dugma, when a person is thinking about an idea, then the inyan is begilui la'atzmei. But it's not shaykh to communicate with anyone else. Then when a person starts thinking, how am I going to communicate that to somebody else? I have to give a shir. I have to go and give a speech. I'm going to go for an interview or whatever it's going to be, and you start preparing about how you're going to present yourself. So you start practicing. How you're going to say something. You're trying to formulate your words. You're talking to yourself. No one's around you. You're learning. Let's say you're learning. You're not even. You're talking to yourself as if you're talking to, like, you're trying to teach yourself. So when you're learning, you're speaking out loud or something. You're not speaking. It's not a dibul lazulas. If it would be lazulas, that's already akrat tzimtzum. We're talking about lifnei tzimtzum. The moshel has been for lifnei tzimtzum. So the dibur is la'atzmei. But already, you're being meshaya how you're going to communicate that with somebody else. If you say you're learning with yourself, it's like if you were an adam nifrad, if you were a separate person, how would you tell yourself? How would you explain this maimah to yourself? How would you explain this mission and the Gemara to yourself? This is how I would say it. These oisias. Now, but poyel mamish, when you have to go and speak to somebody else, you're going to say exactly the same thing. No, then it's a whole different. It's a whole different setup. So Derek, when we gave the mashal in the previous hagos about a binyan bias, right? Building a house. That you can be making all the plans, but it's not b'poel mam, it's not shaykh l'poel. It's a hash'ara. You're writing the plans of how the house should be built. It's not building the house. It's not a pu'ula. It's still ba'atzmai, but it's a gil. It's a which is shaykh l'azulus. So that is a classic example of different forms of ispashtus. That obviously we're talking about dargis and alikus, where there's a greater degree of sort of the hierarchy. The relationship is that is this madrei, how the degree to which it's bottle to the moke. If it's all that hetzichon is the moke, then it's got a high talking about high level of bittul. If it's already shaykh lazulas, it's a lower level of bittul. So in the mashal of machshav and dibur, what is the machshav and dibur about? It's about the vaseichel. So what is the relationship with the vaseichel? The machshav's relationship with the vaseichel, the muskel, is in a state of bittul. Hey, so the oisius are more are not so ba'akshama. because it's all Gabi sich. Yeah? It's like in the Maimon, in Yivchalonu, Tavshin Chav Gimel, the expression says, Yisol Olu b'machshava, ki'ilu hu cheshev eidas atzmei. When it says Yisol Olu b'machshava, it's like the Eibusha thinking about himself. It's eidas atzmei. Calls Mamachi hit Dibur. Dibur is already the hashar. There's such a thing as a zulas. So you're not overwhelmed by the mocker to the same extent, because there's already a possibility for a zulas. Traction wegen a zulas. So remember, we see oir. There's no such thing as oir. We're using oisius to try to explain something. So in these oisius that we're using called oir, we want to give these two distinctions in his pashas oir. So what is he explaining over here? He's saying yesh leimar, that if we want to understand what Atzilus is, we have to understand that we're taking an oir which is already begilu. He calls it etzem oir, but I think he might mean the hispashus oir k'moshu la'atzmai, which is legabi, the hispashus oir legabi Atzilus is an etzem. Machshava is like sort of the etzem of dibur. So this madrege is Shem Akinu etzem oir. But it's only shaykh la'atzmai. That's Malchus Atzilus. Malchus Deinsif. And the Pu'ul of Atzilus is that should be Nimshach, Yerid, the Nimshach to become Pnimis HaKeser. Now, when it comes to, if now I want to think about it, Etzema Oyn, Espashus Oyn, the Moshel it gives in the Samach Vav is from Keiches HaNefesh. So, the Moshel it gives there is mainly from Seichel and from Chesed. So, a person, mitzat shleimus nafshe, every human being, such shleimus nafshe has a keich ha-seichel and has a keich ha-chesed. But that doesn't mean that the person is a chacham or the person is a chastam. It's mitzat nefesh. Mitzat shleimus ha-nefesh. There are keiches which are klulim ha-nefesh. And one of those keiches is chacham, and one of those keiches is chesed. It's ken gar design that in a person, those keiches can be behelim legamri. Because the real inyan of etzema oir, when we say etzema oir, we're talking about the oir when it's in the state of helam. So in fact, there is an oir, called inyan oir, is inyan agilui. So what's the pshat? Oir, which is behelim. Yeah, okay. But to understand that this is what we mean. For the moment, hold that thought. Etzem ha'oir is helam ha'oir. The oir when it's state of helam legamri. It's not even in a state, it's not in a state of helam shelifnei hagilu. It's helam v'gilu. Just means, it's not the helam in the pshat that it's not yet begilu. But the gabi, the gilu is behelam, and therefore this helam will be niskala. It's be'etzem behelam. It's not an inyan shebegilu. It's an inyan shebehelam. Al derech, it's the motion it gives, is in the keiches hanefesh. The shleimus keiches hanefesh, a person has chachma, a person has chesed. But it's possible you can be a shaita, and you could be an achsa. You can both be a fool, you can be a cruel person. Just because you're a fool doesn't mean you don't have koyach hachachma. Just because you're cruel doesn't mean you don't have koyach chesed. The etzem nafshay, you have that koyach. And it's not stira. And le'es min ha'itim, sometimes you'll find even by the cruelest person, they'll display an act of kindness. Could be Yom Chasunasa, Simchas B'nai, he gives the example. You know, they somehow have a gilui from the etzem hanef, gilui atzmi, that all of a sudden you see they do something kind. How's it shaykh? The whole time the person's been a vicious, horrible person. It's not stupid. So, but etzem in the case and horaya, they can have children who are nice people. It's not something that's felt. They can have children who are intelligent. Take another koyach, which he usually gives a similar example. He talks about koyach ne'elamim, koyach atzmiyim, koyach hariyah, a blind person. A person can be a blind person. Chas v'shalom. They lack the capacity for sight. That doesn't mean be'etzem they don't have koyach hariyah. Mitzad the nefesh, there's a koyach hakolum nefesh, there's a koyach hariyah. In Horaya, when he's able to have a child, there's amshacha atzmis. He's able to produce children who are able-sighted people. So, even if there isn't the hiskalas koyach min hanefesh, doesn't mean it's not there. And this is also right that it's also there's no hechrich that it should be in hiskala. Meaning, because it is so behelim, it's not. There's nothing compelling it to be niskala. The reason why it's niskala is conditional. The whole nature nurture thing. The way a person is nurtured, and if it's nimshach b'derech memela, it's not that all of a sudden you reveal the koyach atzmi. No, the koyach atzmi stays behelim. It's be'etzem behelim. It's not. We're not talking about apshitas and hanefesh, whereby there's not even any koyches b'chlal. There's a koyach. It's called a koyach hariyah, it's koyach hachachma, koyach chesed, but it's just behelim. The next stage in its development in a person, what we can call the espashtus area, though, that is like you would call, say, the koyach hamaskil, or you'd say that someone is an ish hatoiv. You say someone's an intelligent person. It doesn't mean they're being intelligent, but they have the capacity to be intelligent. They have begilui benefesh. It's not the pshat that they are be'etzem a chacham. No, they clearly have hiskalus koyach hachacham, koyach hamaskil. They're an intelligent person. This person's a kind person. They might not be doing anything kind. They could be eating breakfast. They're still an ishatov because there's nimshach and it's be'hiskalus and be'metzias the inyan hatoiv shebahem. But then it's a whole different phase when that person starts to be meshaya. How they're going to give tzedakah, how they're going to be nice to someone, or if we're going to use koyach hariyah. So you got the koyach hariyah, but I think koyach hariyah, it doesn't say this in Samach Vav. I just think it's a mashal that if you use the koyach hariyah, I find it a bit easier to appreciate. Koyach hariyah is that a person has the capacity for sight be'etzem hanefesh. It's the inyan atzmi. They're an able-sighted nefesh. They may not be an able-sighted person, but they have an able-sighted nefesh. And that's behelim b'nefesh. And then you have a person who, Baruch Hashem, has the hispashtus of koyach hariyah b'gufam, and they're an able-sighted person. They see. They might not be looking, they might have their eyes closed. They might, even when their eyes are closed, they're still an able-sighted person. It's an inyan la'atzmai. Mitzad atzmon, they have the capacity to see. But it's a gilush la'atzmai at that point. And Nocha Madrega is when you're meshaya what you're going to see. So you're imagining your koyach hariyah is able to sort of visualize, or imagine, in a sense, what they might see. Say you're planning on going on holiday, or you're planning on going to a museum, or you're planning on going to a farbrengen. You're mitzayah the meichel. You're mitzayah your koyach hariyah shebenefesh. How it's going to look like. What you're going to see. What you anticipate to see. It's still a gilul la'atzmi. You haven't seen anything yet. So we're talking about dargas completely before actual engagement with the zumas. How is hakol la'atzmi? We're talking about lifnei atzimtzum, right? The Erin Sefer Lifnei Atzimtzum. We're using a mashal to explain Erin Sefer Lifnei Atzimtzum. But there still isn't no, it's only a hash'ara. So in your koyach hariyah, you're imagining what it's going to look like. And that's the mashal it gives there in the Samach Vav. So going to do the second Eidei Shlema, and then we're not going to do the third. Just want you to see how we need to be mavchin between the three Shlemas. Does that make sense what I said? About the Etzem and Espashas? Yeah? I mean, there's a lot more, obviously. It's like we you saw from the footnote, we could spend our lives on this. And Be'ez Hashem, you will spend your life on this. But for the meantime, I would recommend looking over the Kodesh Yisrael. Maybe don't look in the Sefer Erechim yet. Wait till we finish this and go back, and it might be helpful. So the Eidei Shlema. Another way of understanding Atzilus is like this. Tini yedua de gam bebechinas eirin seif shlifnei atzimtzum yesh bechinas ha'eir k'moi shehu la'atzmoi u'k'moi shehu l'tzerech ha'elamis. So before he said, we know there's etzem ha'eir, we know there's espashas ha'eir. Now he's saying that we know there's an eir which is la'atzmoi and an eir which is l'tzerech ha'elamis. Ubechinas Yudkei, Ubechinas Vavkei, the Atzilus Techlolus. If you remember about Eilamis Techlolus and Eilamis Bepratis, Eilamis Techlolus is the Eirin Seish Lifnei Atzimtzum. Atzilus Techlolus is the Eirin Seish Lifnei Atzimtzum. And that is divided into Yudkei and Vavkei. Just like in Atzilus, we have Yudkei, Vavkei, Chachma Bin Zon Malchus. So you also have that in Eirin Seish Lifnei Atzimtzum. And the Yudkei would be the Eir, Kameshu La'atzmei, and the Vavkei is the Eir, Kameshu L'Tzerech Ha'elamis. Kameshu Kosem is ever der Mascho, Samach the Samach Rishon Zayin. The Samach the Samach is a very significant part of this whole discussion. Ula Zeis, Gam bebechinas Malchus the Ein Seif, She'acha HaTzimtzum, She'nasa Kesel La'atzilus, Yesh Beis Madrigas. Etzem ha'oir, hashayach el ha'etzem, b'espashtus ha'oir, hashayach el ha'elamis. Again, the oisis here are very, very difficult because he's not making it easy. You can see he's not making it easy. Exactly what, I think that when he said before that oir k'moshe hu la'atzmai means etzem ha'oir, as we understand it. K'moshe l'tzerech ha'elamis is the two madrigas in espashtus ha'oir, which was what he said in the first Yishlema. Sorry for making this complicated, but I think I can't get away from the complexity of it. So what's the pshat now? Atzilus is what? Hamshachas v'yiridus ha'oir malchus the Ein Sof shifnei atzimtzum that becomes tachtoina shebamaitzel kesed pnimis ha'kesed shifnei atzilus. Yeah. Now, if that is the case, what is the madrega that is being yered v'nimshach? Not just the two madregas in hispashtus ha'oir, but sai hispashtus ha'oir and sai etzem ha'oir. Okay, that's what I think it's saying. And what it's going to do in the third Yishleimar is say, and zol's wissen sein, that the etzem is not just the hispashtus ha'oir. It's not just the etzem ha'oir, because the etzem ha'oir is me'ein ha'ma'oir, so you also have all of the inyonim of the ma'oir as well. That is what I think what it's saying, even though the Osius might be saying something. Otherwise, I can't figure out what it's trying to say. Unless I could be superimposing stuff, but I think that's what it's trying to say. But it would help me if you learn the Samach Vav. It's mamish klar, beautifully. It's like nice, good few pages of beer. Very, very. It's not difficult. It's difficult, but it's not difficult Osius. And that will be enough, and then we'll do the next Va'idei Shlema next time, Be'ez Hashem. Is that okay?
Yeah.